I'm just going through and making sure, let's see who we have in the room. So we've got Patrick Connington from the Southeast, Rachel Hobson from the SAIL Project. Hi, Rachel. We have Geraldine from Dinleer Rathdown Community Addiction Team. Hi, Geraldine. Older friend, Jennifer from Donny Carney. Hi, Jen. And there's John as well. DLR Cat. We have John from Ballyfermot Star. Hey, John. We've got Sean from CDA Trust.
Morning.
And then we have Andrew Sexton. Not sure what service you're from, Andrew. Grania from DYP. Oh, Andrew's from DYP. Got it. Sean, Stephanie. Not sure where Stephanie's from. That's all right.
Just added, also Donny Carney, I think.
Great. So another one from Donny Carney, Waterford CBDI. That's Waterford. It's Graciela. Great. Derek. Hi, Derek. Good morning. We're joined by Derek O'Neill from the Health Research Board. And then Stephen Bradley from Tiglin, who will have a few other colleagues maybe joining him. Okay, it's nearly 10 o'clock, so we're just going to be giving a chance for a few people to show up, and then we'll be getting started. Does anybody have any questions before we kick off? If you're having any, if one of the things you can do if you want to speak is you can just hold down on the space bar, and what that will do is if your microphone's muted, it will turn it back on. Otherwise, you can also use the chat function. So there's a little chat window where you can leave messages, and that chat window is going to be monitored by a colleague of mine here in the office, Dermot. Right. Phil Mullins from St. Campa. Liam and Linda.
He's going to have 5 extra feet.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. We've got a good group of people. I just saw that Maureen from Tourist Counselling in Dundalk has showed up. Hey, Maureen.
Hello.
Hi there. Okay, we're going to be starting in just a moment. Before we do, I just wanted to go through a few basic things. Just one thing is, if you are at any point having difficulty hearing me, or you are having any kind of technical problems, first off, what you can do is you can join the online telecon. So that means you'll join the audio for this webinar. Here's the phone number and the meeting ID, so you can just plug that in, and that way you can join the telecon. If you're having any technical problems, you can leave a message in the chat window, and you can let us know. This morning, we're going to be joined by my colleague here, and include Dermot, who is a member of the membership team. And Dermot is one of the staff here who is part of Include that will respond to your queries, your support issues, and any tech problems you have, not just about eCASS, but also recently a lot about the kind of NDTRS form. So it's great to have him here. Great. Well, what we're going to do is we're probably going to get started. So unless anybody has any questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put everybody on mute for now. And I'm just going to figure out how to do that. Oh, more. Maybe that's something you might.
What's that?
Oh, mute all. There we go. And
That means they can't. I think they
yeah.
can't hear.
Okay.
Don't know how it knows that.
Okay. Well, I'm confident people will let us know. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, then I'm going to get started. Okay. And you're recording as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So this morning, everyone's here to talk about the NDTRS form for the eCASS system. That's fantastic. We really appreciate everyone making the time to participate on this. First off, I want to be really clear. I mean, the eCASS system has the NDTRS form. It's been designed specifically with the Health Research Board and in partnership with them. And it's been installed in your eCASS system. Both of our charities, including Quality Matters, we really appreciate everyone's support and their time with this. It's a huge amount of work, and we're really proud of it. And we're really delighted that all these addiction services that are part of this kind of community using eCASS have this NDTRS form. So the best thing that I can do is make sure that you guys are really confident and have all the information you need to start using it really well, especially considering that a lot of addiction services are being told that by the end of the month, what they need to do is submit their NDTRS data for the past year. So with that in mind, I really want to focus on whatever I can do to support you and give you the direction you need to make sure that you can get your NDTRS data off to the Health Research Board. What I'm going to be doing in today's webinar is going to be going through each of the individual steps involved in that process. And I'm going to be pausing throughout the presentation to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask questions or get the kind of clarification that they're looking for. So in today's webinar, we'll be talking about the NDTRS form. The NDTRS form is a statutory form that's used by the Health Research Board to record treatment data. And I have to be really clear on this point. Not all addiction services across Ireland are required to submit NDTRS data. There are some addiction services that I've met that do not submit NDTRS data. So if you're one of those services that have never ever done this before, and when I say NDTRS and it makes no sense to you, maybe you're not one of those services that are submitting treatment data to the Health Research Board. But if you are one of those services, then you're in the right place. And if you have any questions around it, you can contact us here at Include. But really what I'll be doing is probably putting you in contact with our colleagues at the Health Research Board. One of them is here on today's webinar. His name is Derek O'Neill. Derek is someone I've worked with quite closely over the years. It's great to have him here and as a representative for the Health Research Board. Derek is one of the staff people at the HRB whose job is actually analyzing and looking at some of this data. So it's really a delight to have him here, and thanks so much, Derek, for making time on a Friday morning. So in today's training, we'll be kind of talking about 3 points. These are 3 really important points to help your service with using the NDTRS form on eCASS. I mean, above all, what both our charities want, including Quality Matters, is for your service to be able to send accurate, complete NDTRS data. And we want to make sure that your frontline staff, your system administrators, and your managers have all the support. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just going to try to pause someone. Current and new participants. Okay. So we're going to be talking about 3 points. So the first one is we're going to talk about the demographic data. That's found on the client record. We'll be talking about creating an actual NDTRS form and kind of going through it and making sure it's complete. And then last but not least, what we'll be doing is talking about how to create an NDTRS report for the Health Research Board. And what that report is essentially how we collect all that data and we send it to the Health Research Board. And that stuff is uploaded into the link system. This is a perfect place just to touch base before I go any further. Does anybody here have any questions? And if you do have questions, I'm going to ask you to use the chat window. And that's kind of a little window that you can open up and you can leave a message. So if you do have any questions, please click a message away, or what you can do is you can hold down on the space bar and you can talk, and that will allow you to kind of be heard by everybody else. Great, so I guess there's no questions, so we'll keep on moving. I'm going to go through a couple just key points or kind of questions that I'm getting asked a lot about the NDTRS form. So what I'll do is I'll go through a few questions and we'll jump right back into an eCASS system. We'll take a look at some of these kind of technical things. So the first question that's being asked a lot is, what has my eCASS system been updated with? Like, what has Include added to our Salesforce system? So just kind of like 3 things that have been added to your eCASS system. The first is the form itself, and that's called the NDTRS link form. The NDTRS form is used by your frontline workers, your key workers, your project workers to record treatment data for your clients and your service users. We also installed the NDTRS link report, and that's essentially a tool that's used to gather all of the NDTRS forms in your system and use that to kind of generate a report that is used to share that information with the Health Research Board. And last but not least, we've also installed a series of predefined NDTRS reports. These are reports that allow you as a staff person or as a manager or as a system admin to look at and review your NDTRS data really quickly, but also I thought it'd be great for an annual report. So you could look at maybe the last year and use some of the information there to create some very interesting figures, charts, and reports. We've got a few questions that are already coming through in our chat window, so I'm going to just click off a few of them. So Jen, your question is what is the official time frame for closing clients? 4 weeks. I think you're probably referring to the time frame for sending an end of year report to the Health Research Board. That's something we're going to talk about, so I'll make sure to touch on that. But thank you for the question. Grania, you asked, could you please go through the NDTRS form for concerned persons for family support? I'd be more than happy to. That's a wonderful question. We'll definitely go through it. And Sean from CDA has asked, I'm having problems with the small area in rural locations. Oh, wow, that's such a popular, that's a common issue. I said popular. What I mean is that's a frequent thing that comes up. So I've got a couple good tips for you to how to address that issue. Great, we're gonna rattle through those as we make our way through the webinar, but thanks so much for leaving questions. We'll work our way through them. So a question I've never been asked, I've also been being asked is, what's changed about how I can complete my NDTRS forms? So what's interesting is when I started working with Quality Matters and Include on the eCASS project, we used to call these HRB forms and HRB reports. So for some of you out there, this is probably what you're familiar with. It's been more than a name change. We haven't just updated the language around this. We've actually designed 2 new components for the eCASS system, and that is the NDTRS link form, which is replacing the old HRB form, and the NDTRS link reports, which is replacing an older system called the HRB reports. Now, the reason that these had to be updated is that this is more than just adding a few questions. We've actually redesigned both of these functions in your eCASS system. It's been a huge amount of work for 2 relatively small charities to accomplish, but with the support of the Health Research Board and through a group of different addiction services out there, we've been really done a really great job of developing a brand new version of this. So we've got to just say thank you so much for everybody for their time, their energy, and above all, their patience. So thanks. Another question I've been asking is, what should I really be asking our frontline workers or our project workers to be focusing on? Well, really, I think the role of a frontline worker is to make sure that the NDTRS forms are entered on their eCASS system and that the data that has been entered is correct or it's valid. And what I mean by valid is that it's not just that it's been entered, that somebody has gone through the process of making sure that that is correct and that there's no errors and there's no warnings. What I'm going to do in today's webinar is I'm going to show you how you look for errors and how you make sure that the warnings that are there, that they're either acceptable or that they have to be fixed. So this is a great opportunity in today's webinar to look at what we can do to support our frontline workers on using the eCASS system to make sure NDTRS forms are ready to be sent off at the end of the month. We'll be talking about two main areas. And I think these are two areas that are really important for frontline workers to take a look at. So one is the demographic details that appear on the client record. We'll be looking at and talking about that section of the system, and the NDTRS form itself. I think that's the two areas that frontline staff need to kind of concern themselves with or focus on. When we talk about reports or sending that information to the Health Research Board, to be honest, I don't really think that's the responsibility of a frontline worker. I think that's probably more within the responsibility of a manager or a system administrator. So if you have a bunch of frontline workers saying, oh, I watched a webinar, or I got an email, or saw a newsletter from Including Quality Matters that says we need to create a report, and we have all these different people creating reports, that's probably an issue, because you have different people handling how you communicate or how you generate data from your eCASS system. So if you want to be explicitly clear with your frontline workers as to what they need to be doing, it's that they need to be responsible for entering NDTRS forms into the system for their clients, and also making sure that they're correct. And we're going to talk about, at the beginning of today's webinar, the two places where that's done. If you have any questions, feel free to put it into the chat window. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with a hands-on demonstration of the NDTRS link form. And I'm going to really highlight, I suppose, not just how you enter the information, because I think most people actually understand that. I'm going to really focus on where people have been communicating to both Including Quality Matters, where they're having difficulty or where they're finding it challenging. These aren't really technical problems. They're more like challenges that people experience with just doing NDTRS forms in general. Some of the challenges that I'm going to talk about are not kind of new. They've been around for a really long time. Actually, I've been helping addiction services with using eCASS and using this form for the past 6 years. And some of these things are challenges that I've talked about at every training session. So I just want to make sure that everybody here has the kind of tips and the kind of hints that they can use for themselves or for their staff team to really move through this as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to our eCASS system. What we're looking at here is a version of eCASS that's in a brand new version called Lightning. And actually, to be honest, we're probably not going to use this version because most of the services that are joined in our webinar today are probably using the classic version. But honestly, I just wanted to show it just in case people were curious as to what this Lightning is that everyone's been talking about. There we go. So there is our kind of classic version of eCASS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on looking at the demographic details that occur on a client record. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find just a client. So if anyone knows that I tend to put out a lot of musicians into eCASS when I'm doing training. So great, here is a client record. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click Edit so that we have a better view of this page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to specifically focus on areas that are relevant to the NDTRS form. So a lot of the questions that are on the client record, they don't necessarily have to relate to the NDTRS form. So for instance, the first name and the mobile number, that information does not ever appear in an NDTRS form. The NDTRS form is an anonymized form. It doesn't contain personally sensitive information about an individual. This is a client record for your eCASS system. So you need that detail in case you are meeting with that client or they've missed their appointment and you need to use their mobile number. But none of that information actually will ever appear on a form itself or the information that you kind of share with the Health Research Board. I'm getting a message from Jen. Got your message, Jen. We'll talk about that at the end. We'll make sure that you can access those reports. So the first area where the NDTRS kind of appears is going to be around the address. We're going to use this information in just a moment to get a small area detail. And in case you're wondering what small area detail relate to, it's this section right here, which it's blank at the moment. So it's kind of the electoral division, the CHO area, and then there's the small area kind of number. For those of you who have used the Health Research Board forms for many years, you'll recognize that some of these questions actually are very similar to what was on the previous form, which is like area of residence. So that's changed. So we've had to redesign this. And to make it easy for addiction service to enter the electoral division and CHO number, I mean, who could actually remember these things? Is we've designed a little tool called Get Small Area. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. let's just move down for a second. So this is really the heart of where the demographic details live on this page. And this is really what's required for the Health Research Board. One of the things I want to show you is a really important box here, which is client has NDTRS forms since 2019. One of the things that sometimes is asked is, what happened to a little box called HRB OK? So frontline workers used to really love, in our older version of eCASS, a little box would appear and say HRB OK, and that would tell you that all these different questions are correct and up to date. So we've replaced that with this checkbox. So what happens when you click this checkbox and you go to the top or the bottom of the page and you press save, it will prompt you with an error message. So as you can see, a couple red boxes have appeared on this page. That's telling me that these questions are probably unanswered or there's an error. So if I click this button off and I pressed save, those error messages wouldn't appear. It would just let me kind of save it regularly. So if you want to do the NDTRS form, what you need to do is tell your frontline workers that you need to click this box and make sure that the questions on the demographic section are up to date and correct. So I'm going to do that now. So who is Marvin Gaye living with? He's living, let's say, alone with children. Employment status, he's on a training course. He lives in Ireland. His country of birth is Ireland. His ethnic background is Irish, and doesn't speak any languages at home. Okay. And then I go down and I see that I've entered the number of children that he is living with. So 1 child under the age of 5 and 2 children between the age of 5 and 17. Great. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the page. I'm going to click save, and it's saved. Great. That tells me that because no error or warnings have appeared, that the NDTRS data under this section is valid, and I'm ready to go to the next step. So that is how we do the demographic details for the NDTRS form on the contact record. Now, one of the questions I've also been asked is, how do we make sure that the small area details, which is this section right here, also is complete? And to do that, what you can do is click this button called Get Small Area. So what happens when I click that is that the eCASS system will grab the address. In this case, I've got an address here in Dublin, and it will pull the 3 different information that we need, 3 different kind of numbers: small area, electoral division, and area. So it's correctly found the address. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to press accept. And it tells me that it was saved in the client record. And now when I go down to the small area box, what we see is that those 3 numbers have been entered. So that's great. Except for one of the questions we were asked by one of the participants, Sean from CDA Trust, has said, what happens when somebody lives in a rural area? It can be really difficult for this system to find that. And I think you're absolutely right. It's a thing that has come up when I've worked with addiction services. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to change the address. I'm going to pick something quite rural. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to Newbridge. Newbridge is not very rural. Sorry. Let's just pick a road in like rural Cavan. I don't know. Let's just say Cavan Road. I'm going to say County Cavan and press OK. I don't know if there's a Cavan Road in County Cavan, but we're about to find out. So I'm going to click the Get Small Area button, and oh gosh, oh, too many matches. So what I can try is maybe we try that the client told us it's 120 Cavan Road. No, that doesn't exist. Oh, okay, so 10. Okay, so there's a bunch of them. Okay, great. So what I'm trying to maybe illustrate is maybe 2 points. First off, the addresses that you use from your clients are going to be used to generate the small area data. So if clients have a very unusual address, it might make it very difficult for you to search for the small area in your eCASS system. One of the things that I've learned that you can do is you can either search on Google or use kind of the air code finder to enter the address, and that might give you a better or more clear or accurate kind of address for an individual. In some cases, though, what I've learned is that you kind of need to maybe just play around with what's here. So, if, for instance, if I had a client who lived at 120 Cavan Road, and for instance, it kind of maybe wasn't coming up kind of correctly. Sometimes I might just need to change that just ever so slightly to make sure. So 110 Cavan Road is not coming up. So if I put 112, let's see if that comes up. Oh, see, it doesn't. So let's say 100. Like, you just sometimes need to tweak it. Like, if it's going to be in the same address, like near enough to the same address, they're going to have the same small area. They're going to be in the same electoral division, and they're going to be in the same CHO area. So that small change is not going to mess with their address on their record, but it's going to make sure that you kind of get the same small area, the correct small area data for their where they live. So I'm going to press accept. Now, another thing that some addiction services have done is they've also used a local post office. Now, this has been for particular cases. So they've used the address of a local post office where they're in the town they're living, because they do live in a very rural location. And even if their address or their cottage or their home is not easily found on the system, you're going to find the address for a postal office. So they use that because they're living in that vicinity. I also know that some addiction services use that postal address as a proxy for people who are rough sleeping or who may be homeless. So that's kind of been a practice that some addiction services have done. Okay, great. Yes, you can only see the button. So some people ask, well, why can't I see that button? Well, you need to make sure you've pressed this, you've saved the form so that you can actually see it. So when you're editing the form, it's not going to be visible. So we've got a few questions here. I'm going to just pause for a moment and answer a few of them. So I've got a question from Rona O'Connor. So Rona's explained that one of the challenges that she's had is that they're having errors and they cannot override some of them when with the solution that is suggested. Great, Rona. I'll go through that later on when we look at the NDTRS form itself. A question from Rachel from the SAIL project is, what options if we cannot find small area in Dublin? So I've kind of talked about that a little bit. I'd say that what you can do is you can kind of almost find a nearby address, like really close to it, or you can kind of maybe sometimes change the number, because sometimes that's happened. Or you can try to find something that's in the local vicinity, like a post office that's really close to where the client is living. Like really close, especially for Dublin, because the small area data for Dublin is especially close. But if you're having, actually, probably the best thing is if you're having clients where you're having difficulty finding the small area, and this is actually a continual problem for you, especially if you're in Dublin, like the SAIL project is north inner city, I think maybe give us a call at Include, because it might be something that's happening where your staff is maybe inputting the address kind of incorrectly, and we can kind of make sure that that's being done. Sorry.
We're putting in too much of an address.
Okay, yeah, so it's like there's too much detail there and then the system doesn't know what to do with it. So this is a perfect example. We want to make sure that the address information that you put in there is correct. So if it feels like this is a consistent issue for your service, or your service that's in Cavan, for instance, like community development, community drug, CDA, sorry, give us a buzz and we can help you with that. John from DLR Cat said, can you go back and try to say the person is living with parents and their children, please? Okay, great. Or I'll do that right now. So I'm going to troubleshoot an issue that's just come through from John. He's having an issue down here with the children details and how that work with this. So I think you meant partner and children. Or did you mean parents and children? You said parents with their children. Okay, well, that's not actually one of the options here, John. You can't say that they're living with their parents and their children. So in that case, I would say they're probably alone with their children. So if you wrote parents and family, for instance, I'll just do it anyways. You're probably gonna get an error message. And the error is oh, I assume that would have presented an error. Oh, I guess it didn't. Okay. So if that's an issue that you're having, or if there is an error message that for some reason has appeared to you, it may not be with those numbers. Oh, sorry, you're talking about maybe the children's down here. So here, sorry, my apologies. I'm just wondering if one of the things that maybe John is referring to is not actually changing this. It's living with other parent, or they're maybe living with their parents, but they're not living with the person. So if I, for instance, I said that they were living alone, but their children were living somewhere else, like they're living elsewhere. Press save. Sure. So that seems like it would say fine. So yes, there's different variations. And I think probably something that you're communicating is that some services had some problems with this earlier on. So if you're still having the issue, great. So I see here, yeah, I see that Stephanie, for instance, has mentioned she has an issue with this, and Rona. So maybe what we can do is, if you're having a specific problem, what you can do is contact our support team. Same issue in star. Okay. Well, great. I see a few people have mentioned this. So how about what we do is I just take a note. We'll get Dermot to just write down those projects, and we will just kind of contact your group and follow up with you around that. Is that okay?
Yeah, can we get a specific, like?
Yeah, people are saying the same issue. I think probably it's worth, what's really helpful if you're having an issue is you kind of do need to contact the support team here at Include. And what's very helpful is if you could give us a specific client you're having that issue for. So if you could say, like, you know, if you could send, for instance, a client ID in an email to Include, that way you're not giving the name of your client, and explain what the issue is. That way we can follow up with you directly. I hope that's all right with everybody. Good. Great. I'm going to talk about the NDTRS form in just a second, Andy, so I'm going to touch on that topic. So on the client form, what you need to really communicate to your team is to make sure that this button, client has NDTRS form since 2019, is turned on, and that the demographic details are correct. Sometimes when I've been working with addiction services, what they've told me is that, like, they can't save their form, or there's errors and they don't know where the errors exist. And it's only until we look at this page at the demographic details do we realize that there's been some error here, that we haven't had a chance to update this information or make it correct. So please make sure that on the client record that you've correctly completed all the details here before you've done an NDTRS form. And if you are having repeated errors on your NDTRS form, the issue might actually be that you haven't finished this at all. Is that all right? So I'm just going to pause for a moment because we've got two questions that have come through our window. And I just want to take an opportunity to just talk to those. So first one, Rona, and I'm just trying to figure what organization is Rona from. Don't have it here. That's all right. Maybe you might let us know, Rona, if that's all right. Rona asked, where the client does not have a pass ID, what can you do? Okay, so one of the questions that are, so we don't actually ask for clients to provide a pass ID. You do not need a pass number or pass ID number to do an NDTRS form. Pass relates to services who are accessing kind of housing supports or housing service, accommodation services. Great. So you're from Peter McVerry Trust. Okay, so that makes sense why you're asking, Rona, about the pass ID, because that's really relevant to the kind of accommodation services you provide through Peter McVerry Trust. But it's not required on the NDTRS form. So what you probably should do, if you haven't already, is take an opportunity to speak with the Health Research Board. The NDTRS form is used for gathering treatment data, as you probably know, but there are specific questions on your form that have to do with the NDTRS form. What you're probably talking about, for instance, the box around the pass ID, is probably that's something that was added to your system specifically for Peter McVerry Trust. It has nothing to do with the NDTRS. If you have more specific questions about how your system was customized, please feel free to contact our team here at Include. We can't do that because they don't have a client ID. So Grania has kind of, I got a message here from Grania from Donny Carney Youth Project saying, we can't do an NDTRS form for clients because they don't have a client ID. We can't do an NDTRS form for clients who are accessing our family support service because those clients, a concerned person, do not have a client ID. Grania, every time someone is added to your eCASS system, and a client ID should be automatically generated for them. So irrespective if they're someone who's a concerned person or if they're working with the drug and alcohol team, they should be getting a client ID automatically by entering them into your eCASS system. And we use that number as part of the NDTRS form. So you may not be manually creating a number, but your system will be. And lastly, there's a question here from Andy O'Connell. Andy is from working with Tiglin. He's said, the issues that that the staff are referring to is that when you attempt to unpause an NDTRS form, an error comes up telling you to go back to the eCASS page and check that the children are living with the service user, and then this will allow you to unpause and close the NDTRS form. Yes, so one of the issues I think that everybody here has been kind of highlighting is that there's kind of an issue that they're experiencing where they're recording the number of children, and then this is creating a problem for them. So I know this was kind of a known issue last year, and it was addressed and it was updated. So I maybe suggest people to go back and just double check that that issue still exists. Like your system has been updated with the most recent version of the NDTRS form. It may no longer be a problem for you. So that's why I've said if this issue is persistent or you're still having problems with that, please contact our team here at Include with a specific client ID, and that way we can go into your system and we can make sure that issue has been resolved. Thanks, Patrick. Great, maybe you can send us an email afterwards. Thanks for that message. Another thing is from Maureen in Tourist. Some of our historical clients have a missing ID when I view in new view demographic. Okay, well, that's very unusual, I suppose, Maureen, that you would have clients with a missing ID because it is kind of automatically generated. But if you don't mind sending us an example of one of those clients that's doing that, we can kind of investigate that for you. Great, Grania. I'll come back to that question in just a moment. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the NDTRS form, if that's all right. So we're going to talk about the NDTRS form, and I just want to let people know where we're trying to get to is we want to really talk about what your service needs to do to kind of make sure that the NDTRS form is not just entered, but to make sure the information is complete, correct, or validated. So we'll be kind of talking about 3 steps. The first one we've already talked about. You need to make sure you've added a client to your system and that you've kind of inputted their demographic details and their small area data. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to create an NDTRS form on your eCASS system. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through, focus really on the process of how to make sure that the warnings or the errors are kind of dealt with. And then after we've talked about that, we're going to look at how you actually generate reports so that information can be sent over or uploaded to the link system.
You go and contact NDTRS, and that might where she's trying to go do the form and then go back and find the client.
So one of the things that I'm going to talk about is I'm going to kind of go back to the NDTRS form. We've already created one here for this client. So we're going to kind of look at that. It's not complete, so we'll go through and make sure that the errors are kind of dealt with. So I'm going to click into that now. So I want to just highlight a few things on here that are really important information for everybody to know. And some of these things might be new to you if you haven't participated in any of this training in the past. So the first thing is that there's a new system that's been added to your NDTRS form, and that's called the NDTRS treatment status. And it's essentially, it's a traffic light, red, yellow, and green. We're going to talk a lot about what those different colors mean. They were designed really for you and your staff to make this whole process a lot easier and to understand what stage your form was at. I'm going to just give you a little bit of a foreshadowing where we're going to go. Red means that the form is either paused or there's errors on it. So we want to make sure that those forms specifically are corrected or that they're ready to go, because any forms that are red are not going to be kind of shared with the Health Research Board. They're not ready to be sent. They're incorrect. One of the things that I think has come up for some people is, and I think actually Grania from the from Donny Carney Youth Project has said that when she's trying to create a new NDTRS form, she can't seem to find the client name. And the reason that might be occurring is because on the previous page, you haven't clicked the box that says that the client has an NDTRS form since 2019. So if you're having difficulty finding a client when you're trying to create a brand new form, maybe go back for a moment, double check that on the client record that all the demographic details are correct and you've clicked the box.
The issue with the age is being sorted.
Actually, John, you've mentioned an issue with the age. That came up actually earlier this week for a project that I'm working with as well. And our colleagues at Include said that they sorted that issue out. So we'll get that fixed for you.
You have to go into each ward. There was a validation rule that's been...
So Dermot's telling me they're going to take a look at that. Great, thank you. Oh, Waterford, West Waterford, South Tipperary is telling that they don't have the treatment status on your system. Okay, well, that's actually something that probably we could just look into as well. You do have the update, but maybe we need to double check to make sure that that's been affected for all users in that system. So thank you, Griselia, appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this NDTRS form and we're going to just touch on a few key points and we're going to make sure that this form is ready to be sent off to the Health Research Board. So I want to go through just this form just briefly and just talk about a few key areas. Most of the questions on the form are similar to the previous version, the Health Research Board form that was on your eCASS system. But I want to just maybe highlight a few areas where I found that maybe there's been changes or that there are common issues that have happened for kind of frontline workers and for system admins. So one of the first things that I would probably say that I've noticed a lot of is that people are actually not completing this section. They're leaving some of the information blank. So I'll give you an example of something I see in a number of services. They've said, oh, a client hasn't ever accessed drug treatment past, so it's not really relevant. This client did actually get an alcohol support in the past. They went to another addiction service and did that when they were, say, 25, 24 years old. Other, I don't really know sure what that means. I don't know what other refers to, so I'll just leave it blank. Well, that's kind of a common issue. You can't just leave it blank. The Health Research Board want to know information around that. And what other actually is referring to, for those who are curious, is refers to any other form of addiction, like gambling or different process addictions, behavior addictions. So it could be something like gambling, it could be sexual addiction, it could be, you name it, a different type of process addiction. So in this case, if they've never received any treatment for that addiction, then what you can say is that they were never treated, and you can enter the number 88. In case you're wondering what 88 refers to, that's why we have little question boxes here, so that people can get some of that detail. The last one is around opiate substitution. Opiate substitution refers to methadone. So if they've never received that, you can just write here, say they never have. John, I got your message. I'll just touch on it a little bit. Thanks so much. So another section here that has changed is the kind of drug use section. And the only change that's happened there is instead of 4 different substances, services can now enter 5. So in this case, I've added that the client started drinking. Kind of the first time they ever used alcohol was the age of 12, and they're using it right now. They're using it daily. I'm going to put another drug here, if that's all right. I'm going to put it in benzos. So the client said they're unspecified kind of benzodiazepine. Great. So they're going to eat it and drink it. They're going to use it 4 or 6 times per week. And the first time they use it was the age of, say, 22. Great. So I could keep on going through this. I mean, there's lots of things that in here that we can kind of do. I'm going to just update some of this information. Great. Great. So if anybody's having any difficulties with this or finding substances, make sure that it says all fields. So if I searched weed, for instance, I mean, it came up. So I don't really think it's kind of a big issue for people. Great. So I'm going to press save. So anyways, so I just wanted to kind of complete a series of questions on here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm really going to take off the pause button. I'm going to press save. So what the computer is going to do, it's going to scan this form to see if there's any error messages. What I need to do is use the kind of scroll down until I find areas that are highlighted in red. So some people get confused and they say, oh, why is this red? That person has an alcohol. That's not an error. That's just telling you that's a required box. So if you look kind of, where is it? Right here. It says a line is required information. So we're actually looking for questions that have been circled in a big red line. So I scroll down, and there's an error message. So it says that in this case that I've put a treatment date before. And actually, in fact, my client is still active in our service. So I'm not sure why this is there. So I should probably delete the information and press save. So I press save. The computer scans the form again. Oh, it's found more issues, more errors. Great. So I go down and I look for whatever those error messages could be. And I go through and I go, oh, I just need to clear that information. So you need to kind of almost keep on clicking the save button until you've cleared those error messages. If you don't want to deal with those error messages, you need to turn the pause back on. But really what we want to get services to do is once they've turned the pause off, is to click save as many times as possible so that you can address some of those error messages. And an error message kind of needs to be dealt with. You kind of need to sort through. There's a few questions that are coming in through our chat window. I'm going to go through one more thing, and then I'm going to talk about how to answer some of those questions or that you have. Is that right? So right now, our form is red. So even though we've fixed all the errors, it's still telling me that it is a red form when I want it to be either yellow or green. I want it to no longer be red. And the only way to do that is you need to click the button that says check warnings, and that's right here on your page. And when you do that, the eCASS system will scan the form and see if there's any warnings or kind of potential errors on your form. So I'm going to click the check warnings button. Oh, so I got a warning. It says that this client appears to have started using drugs or alcohol from a very young age or very old age. This is unusual. Please check and confirm. Okay, so I put down that this client started using alcohol at a very young age. And now my eCASS or the NDTRS form is telling me that that's very unusual. But when I spoke with this client, Marvin, in our key working session, that is what he said. So it is unusual, but that is the case. So what I need to do here is click this button, accept warnings. And what when I click that button, what it does is it's saying the warning is actually acceptable. The client was using a drug or a substance at an early age. So what you've seen is that the number went from red to yellow. Now, yellow means that you have a form that is acceptable for the Health Research Board, but it does have some warning messages. But those warnings are fine, that they've been rectified, or that you've said as a service that they're fine. A green form means simply that you have an NDTRS form that doesn't have any warnings, that there's nothing that needs to be accepted. It's fine the way it is. Your addiction service is really looking for your forms to be either green or to be yellow. So those are two things that are acceptable for the Health Research Board. So I'm going to go that one more time. Like for instance, if I click the edit button now and I made a change to this, so let's say that they started using alcohol at the age of 20. The first time they used drugs at the age of 19. So I press save. Anytime I've made a change to this form, you'll see that what was once yellow has now reverted back to red. Now that's been intentional. Anytime you make a change to this, you need to click the check warnings button again. You need to make sure this information is correct. So that's why it automatically comes back to red. I click the check warnings button. This time it says there's no warnings detected. So there's no issues with this form. And when I click return to treatment, it goes from red to green. So that's how the kind of traffic light system works. And I just want to be clear, yellow and green forms are both acceptable. Great, so I want to go through a few of these things and questions that you're asking. So let's go through a few of these different questions. All right, so John, okay, you were saying that you get treatment status unknown in your drop-down menus. John, based on that, the issues that you've previously mentioned in this chat window, I'm not sure if your NDTRS form has been kind of enabled since it's been installed. So we gave some guidance when we installed this, is that what you need to do is activate some permission for the different staff members. Off the top of my head, I feel like that might be one of the cases here. So I'm writing down right now, John, I'm going to check in with you about that, okay? And John, I hope you're in the office today, because I'm going to give you a buzz after this. Okay, the next one is from Rona. We're having an issue that occurs either the contact or the link form, particularly in questions 18, 19, and 20. When we do use 8809 as directed, it still does not work. The error remains, and we have to pause the form in order to save it. Rona, you need to contact us. When you were saying that you're having an issue, the biggest issue, and this has happened repeatedly, it's hard on a webinar for us to really figure out what exactly the source of that problem is. What we need you to do is raise a case with Include. That way, a member of the membership team, like literally, we have about 4 or 5 staff here in Drumcondra who respond to these queries. One of them is my colleague Dermot, who's right next to me. He's on his head saying, yes, if you raise a case with us, we'll follow up with that issue. So please, if you could raise that issue and maybe highlight an example where that's happening, that way our staff can go into your eCASS system and kind of figure out what's causing that problem. But thanks so much for that message. And I know you've raised another question down below, so I'll come back to you in just a moment. Sean from CDA said, in relation to family support or concerned person, is there a possibility that polysubstance could be included for the drug box to accurately reflect? Plus, what is up with the alcohol section? Great. And Sean, I think if you have a client who's accessing family support or is a concerned person, you're not required to enter a drug underneath that. So, sorry, let me be more clear. If a client is accessing CDA Trust or any other addiction service for family support, they are a concerned person. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on this page. So here, they're a concerned person, and under drug, you're going to write the word concerned, because what you're looking for is concerned person as an option. Down here, you've asked if you could enter a substance. You don't need to enter a substance. If a client is accessing your service as a concerned person, they're not using a drug, someone else's, and you don't need to list what those substances are. If you're having questions about how information could be entered for a concerned person, you really should be speaking with the Health Research Board. Their NDTRS team are the ones who are responsible for designing this form, and they have a manual, a guidebook, and online resources to explain how you enter that information. Polydrug, unfortunately, can't be just added to this. This is something that is been designed by the Health Research Board, including Quality Matters have worked with them to kind of create this form so that it meets their requirements, but we can't just add options to it. That's not really how it works. It is a statutory form. So if you're putting, I think to my understanding, again, I know that Derek O'Neill from the Health Research Board is on this webinar. To my understanding, you're not required to provide that information on what substances someone else is using. This is information about what an individual is using. Is hand sanitizer an option for alcohol really needed? John, again, I wish I could answer that, but unfortunately I don't work for the Health Research Board, so I don't have any information about what's needed. Essentially what's been in here has been what's been designed by the Health Research Board and their NDTRS team. From Ron O'Connor, your messages, error messages are very often cannot be rectified using your own guidelines. Again, I'm not really sure, Ron, what you're kind of referring to, so it's probably best that you kind of maybe get in contact with the team of Include, because probably what you would benefit from is some a little more kind of one-to-one support around some of the issues that you're having. And if you haven't already, Rona, if you haven't received any training directly on the NDTRS form from the Health Research Board, that's a very good idea. I think one of the things that I've noticed is that if people are having kind of common challenges, they would really benefit from being able to speak directly with the Health Research Board about getting guidance around these forms and looking at the manuals they had for it. So a lot of people sometimes conflate and include Quality Matters with the Health Research Board. We're actually two different organizations. The Health Research Board is a state-funded body that is responsible for managing and analyzing this treatment data. Including Quality Matters are two charities who designed an eCASS system, and as part of that, we put a lot of time and investment in designing the NDTRS form so that services could make this easier for them. Anyways, the next question, Maureen, error message not recognizing when a client is getting treatment from the date of assessment, especially if the client is attending a program, a structured day program or alcohol program. That's very unusual, Maureen. So let me see if I can just do that. So let's say, okay, so alcohol. So the person's using alcohol. I'll do this. So I'm just going to try to create the issue that that Maureen's talking about. Let's say they started on this referral date and that they were assessed maybe a week later. Okay. So if you're having an error message, which is happening down here, so let's say they came in and I gave them a brief assessment. Maybe it was just kind of an intake, and they got maybe one session. And I press save. This is going to create an error message. I already know it. And the error message is you can't give a brief intervention or any intervention before they've been assessed. So I need to move that maybe to the 8th and press save. Now you can see it's gone back to green. What I'm trying to communicate is more, it may be with the sequence of those dates. According to the kind of health research board and the guidance that they've given and nobody can start on a program or receive an intervention until they've been assessed. So you need to make sure that those dates are kind of in the right order, or that you're not putting in dates beforehand. Right? Great. So Sean from CDA has asked, our form automatically populates as drinking alcohol, throwing up a message saying alcohol consumed, my bad, didn't see the concerned option. Oh, great. Thanks, John. Thanks so much for that. And Rona, great. I know, Rona, I'm sure that you guys are actually have a clarity about how to input that information, but I think maybe it's really important that you take an opportunity to follow up with our staff here at Include, because what it sounds like is probably there's repeated issues, and we want to make sure that you're entering the information into that form kind of correctly. That's all. So yeah, thanks for your message. We look forward to talking to you about that. So thank you. And I see a message right here actually from Derek O'Neill from the Health Research Report that's saying the same thing. Any questions related to the specific content of the form, or like why questions are asked that way, or why those are certain answers? I think Derek's absolutely right. I think it's probably a good idea to bring those specifically up to the Health Research Board. The error messages that are in here, the warnings that are in here, those are all been designed by the Health Research Board. Those are all consistent with their kind of information. Anyways, the most important thing that I think that I want to focus on before we move off to another topic is I want to talk about the check warnings button. That is really what we need to get staff doing. They need to be clicking that button, because when they do, their red forms will move to yellow or green. And by the end of the month, when your service is trying to get data over to the Health Research Board, you're going to be sending your green and yellow forms. So that's really what you want to do. To help your service with doing that. So if you're a manager, or if you're a system administrator and you're going, oh my gosh, we've got lots of forms, we need to get these off at the end of the month, and lots of them are red, what can you do? Well, if you go to the NDTRS link form button up here, you can go and you'll see a series of views here at the top of the page. So it says all right now. I can click there and I can see all the NDTRS forms on my system. And you can see how many of these are red, how many yellow, and here how many are green. Okay. You can also see all the NDTRS forms that are not ready to be sent. So these are forms that either have the pause button on or that they're red. So you can see that these are red, so that means they're not ready to be sent. These are yellow and green, so that means, oh, they're okay, but somebody's turned on the pause button on those, and that means they can't be sent to the Health Research Board in that current state. So this is really what we need our services to be focusing on. If you are a system administrator, if you're a manager and you want to communicate to your staff team, there's another version of this report that says, my NDTRS forms are not ready to attach. And when you're a frontline worker or you're a staff person, what you're going to see is the forms that you've specifically created. So you're only going to see the forms that you've made. And what you can do is you can tell your staff members, go to NDTRS link form, click on my NDTRS forms not ready to attach. And what you're going to see is those are the things that you're going to have to concentrate on before the end of the month to make sure that those forms are correct and they're validated. You need to kind of go through those steps. Once that you've correctly done that, like you've reviewed your forms, you've clicked the check warnings button, then you can see that under this, these are the forms that are ready to attach. So if I was a frontline worker, what I'm looking at is 10 forms that I finished before the end of the month, and I need to make sure that all the other ones are moved into here. I hope that makes sense, you know. So I think this is a new feature that we've put together here at Include to make it really easy for you to work with your staff team to say, what do I need to focus on? Well, you need to work on, yeah, you need to kind of get them all green or yellow. That's essentially the goal. Yeah. Great. I don't have that button. I need to snip reports. Okay, Jen, I think you probably do have the. Oh, you found it. Okay, great. Thanks. No, it's not the one. It says there's gaps and sheet. Oh, I see what you meant, Maureen. I can give you a call about this afterwards, Maureen. Thank you for being a little more clear. Okay, so I'm just writing down a few notes. Okay, so when you get your information kind of validated, so when your frontline workers or you as a manager or a system administrator has made sure that your 2019 forms are ready to be sent to the Health Research Board, you know, what's going to happen into the future is that you're going to have to upload this information to the link system. And what happens is when you upload all your forms to the link system, they'll be processed by the team at the Health Research Board, and then you'll be able to go into your link system to kind of access that data. So you can see all the forms that you've moved from your eCASS over to the Health Research Board system called Link. If you don't know anything about Link, I have a slide here on it, but you know, what is the Link system? So the Link system is a new online system that was created by the Health Research Board, and it's used for addiction services to upload and manage the data, their NDTRS data. When I say NDTRS data, I'm really talking about NDTRS forms. This system is used by kind of addiction services and other services in Ireland to manage their NDTRS data and to use that information to report into the Health Research Board. So this was a new development that was done by the Health Research Board. If memory serves, they kind of designed that system and it kind of came into effect in kind of 2018, 2019. And they've been kind of gradually training up addiction services that have been using their form to kind of understand how to use the Link system. So your service should have a kind of a username and a password for the Link system to log in. If I'm talking about the Link system, and for you, this is the first time that you've heard about it, or that you don't have a lot of knowledge or familiarity with the Link system, I would really encourage you to speak with the Health Research Board about that. They do provide training. I'm well aware that there's 2 training sessions that are offered this month alone, because I've referred other services to it. But it would be a good idea to familiarize yourself with that system. So what I want to talk about now is actually how we are going to create a report that's going to be sent to the Health Research Board. I know it's about 10 o'clock now, so this will probably take about 10 minutes to talk about. So if you're interested in staying and listening to about how information is going to get from your system over to the Health Research Board, I'd say just kind of hold on for the next 10 minutes if that's all right. What we're going to talk about is really what you need to do to be able to move your data over to the Health Research Board. So I'm aware, as probably a lot of you are, is that the Health Research Board has requested from addiction services that their 2019 NDTRS forms need to be kind of sent by the end of the month, January 31st, 2020. So here at Include, we are also really aware of that. And we've been found out a process. We've built a process to help your service with getting that information over there. So we've been kind of communicating this to our services for the past maybe month, since December. So I just want to be really clear about what this process is going to look like. Is that all right? So we want to get information from your eCASS system over to the Health Research Board. So what would happen is that first off, what you would do is you'd make sure your NDTRS forms are ready to be uploaded and that they're validated. When I say validated, what I mean is that your service has clicked the check warnings button and they've gone from red to either green or yellow. What's going to happen at the end of the month is your service is actually going to notify Include. You're going to tell the team here by email that the NDTRS data on your eCASS system is ready and it's validated. And what's going to happen after that is Include is going to generate a report for your addiction service. they're going to gather all the validated NDTRS forms on your system for 2019, and they're going to send that information over to the Health Research Board. So the message is that your service does not need to worry about this month about creating a report and getting that over to the Health Research Board. The staff team here are happy to help you with that. What you need to do are steps 1 and steps 2. You need to first make sure that the NDTRS forms on your system are ready and that they're validated, that you and your staff team have gone through the process of making sure that they're correct. And once you're happy with that, before the end of the month, before January 31st, before that deadline, you need to contact our staff team and say, great, we're all done. You, NCLUDE, can gather that information and you can share that with the Health Research Board. We're happy for it to be sent. We're going to be sending off an email to your staff to this effect so that you guys can see, well, these are the steps I need to take. But I just want to be clear. I mean, you don't need to, at the end of this month, just create a report and send it to the Health Research Board. We're happy to take care of that for you. The main reason we're doing this is because we realize and we appreciate that a lot of people find this quite stressful. They have a lot of forms. They're working very hard to make sure that it's correct. We feel the best thing we can do is to support your addiction service with this process is let's offer help by creating the form, creating a report. Let's gather that information for those services and get it off to the Health Research Board. And when we spoke with the HRB about this, they said, great, that's fine. We're happy for you to do that for us. If it makes it easier for the projects, then that's great. So that's really the steps involved. I'm happy to take questions around that if you do have it. You know, starting in February, though, we're going to be getting services to actually upload their data themselves. So once they get over this hump, they're going to take responsibility for doing it themselves. And the main reason is because the end of year report that's due at the end of January 31st is a lot of information. And I was with the service yesterday. They've got 150 forms that need to be sent off. That's a lot of work. But into the future, they probably will be sending off somewhere between 10 to 15 forms per month. So it's more manageable for them into the future. You know, in that case, what an addiction service will be doing is kind of the same thing as I talked about before. You know, the first thing they're going to do is that every month, what they'll be responsible for is making sure that the NDTRS forms are ready to be uploaded and they're validated. It's just that we're not talking about a huge quantity of forms. We're talking about just the forms that were done that month. You know, step 2 is that the system administrator will create an NDTRS report for their service. And once they've created a report, they'll download an Excel spreadsheet with anonymized NDTRS data. So that's like, you know, blank kind of a Excel spreadsheet with full of NDTRS data, but there's no names, there's no phone numbers, there's no, like, you would never find a PPS number there, this kind of stuff. So, and then what they do is that they'll create an Excel spreadsheet once that's generated from the system. So it's been downloaded into your computer. You just grab that and you put it onto the link system. Now, I'm happy to go through that with people. In fact, actually, we have a YouTube video that we've created that we're going to go through those steps with. And I'll be happy to share that in our next newsletter. I really don't want to demonstrate, I suppose, the steps involved with generating a report today for fear that it might confuse people. And they're going to go, oh, I saw Philip demonstrate it. That's what I need to do. No, you don't. At the end of this month, an NDTRS report is going to be created by our colleagues here at NCLUDE. So if it's all right with everybody, I'm not going to demonstrate it right now because I just want to make sure that people are really focused on what they need to do, which is right now is making sure your NDTRS forms are correct and up to date. So before the end of the month, if you want to get your data into the Health Research Board, before the deadline of January 31st, 2020, what you need to do is first make sure that your frontline workers have completed and have validated their NDTRS forms. That means clicking the check warnings button. Number 2, you need to notify the team here at NCLUDE that the NDTRS data on your eCASS system is ready. You need to do this probably before the end of the month in order for us to make sure that your service has that information sent over to the Health Research Board on time. And lastly, NCLUDE will export. That means they'll download the NDTRS data from your system, only the forms that are green and yellow, and that this information will be sent directly to the Health Research Board. That's essentially what we're going to do. We're not going to touch it. We're just going to download it, send it off to them. So that's the steps. And yeah, like I said, I mean, there's probably a huge amount of work for the team here at NCLUDE. So a big thanks to everybody there who's doing that work, because we really appreciate, I'm sure you guys appreciate the time that they're going to do to kind of support you with that. But again, I think everybody here really acknowledges it's a lot of work at the end of the year to get this data sent off to you. Actually, Patty, what's happening? You don't actually need to send us anything, Patty. What you need to do is just tell us. You need to send us an email that says, oh, our NDTRS data is ready. It's in our system. And what happens is the Enclude team here will kind of log in after you've given permission. We'll log in and we'll download that data. Ooh, someone's microphone's on. Sorry. So, Patty, all you need to do is send us an email. Then what we'll do is we'll download it and we'll send it directly to the Health Research Board. So essentially, that's what your service needs to worry about, making sure your clients are on your eCASS system, that you've done the demographic details, you've added an NDTRS form, and then you don't need to worry about this stuff. You don't need to export anything. That's going to be handled by our team at Enclude. I'm just kind of, because we're kind of nearing towards the end of our presentation, I just want to say that there is a series of reports that we've created for addiction services. Each of your services, you do have these reports. I think there's about 30 reports that we've designed for your eCASS system. There's 4 types of reports we've done. So there's reports on demographic information. When I mean reports on, I mean they use information or data that's in your eCASS system. So one theme is around demographics. There's one theme around NDTRS forms. There's a series of reports around referrals, and there's ones around, you know, the types of substances or addictions that present among your clients. And I just want to show you where to find these reports, because earlier on, Jen from DYP, an addiction service here in Dublin, asked, where do I find those reports? So if I go back to my eCASS system, and I'm going to just click over here on reports. You're going to find a folder here called NDTRS link, redefined reports. And here you're going to see all the different reports based on your substance or referral or on the NDTRS link form or even demographics. So these are great, especially if you are creating an annual report. So this one says about different counties where people live. It says there's only 1 for Dublin. And if I go over here and I click previous year, and I press run report, oh, there we go. So there's a breakdown on all the different counties. So there's a variety of different reports in here. So this one says, you know, what is the main substance for clients by age? And if I go back to the previous year, here's a report. So it's telling me that the majority of my clients are between the ages of 25 to 34. 1 person had gambling, 16 had benzodiazepine, and 3 had alcohol. I mean, this is, for me, someone who helps addiction services do research or write strategic plans. This is great. This gives a really clear and quick breakdown on some of the information that we'd use, maybe in an annual report or strategic plan, or even some research or evaluation for a service. So Jen in DYP, if you haven't had a chance to find those reports and go through some of them, please do. I think there's a lot of useful stuff there. And what you'll find is when you go to each of these reports, you'll see that I've written a little explanation underneath the title about what each of these reports do. Oh, okay. Well, that's very weird, Jen. So yeah, how about I look into it? DYP. Yeah, thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. Can we just maybe mute whoever's microphone is going off? Is that all right, Jen? Yes. Okay, so great, Patrick, thanks for your message. I've got your message there. Like I said, I'll look into it. So the last thing I want to talk about, getting help. That's probably been the most kind of important theme of today's webinar, is that we recognize that people have very specific challenges with using the NDTRS form on the eCASS system. Some of those challenges we've been able to kind of address today, but in a few cases, I think that there are services out there who probably would benefit not just from participating in a webinar, but rather contacting our membership team and having an opportunity to speak with them directly about some of the challenges you're having. There's a few people in particular I want to get a hold of, and you'll probably be hearing from me or my colleagues in Enclude today to follow up on today's webinar. So thanks very much for raising some of those issues. But I want to just be really clear about what you can do, and I want to be clear about what the Health Research Board can offer and what Including Quality Matters can do as well. So both of, like, you're being supported really by a handful of organizations who want to make sure that you and your staff are well supported with using the NDTRS form on your eCASS system. So those two groups are really the Health Research Board and Including Quality Matters. I don't work for the Health Research Board. I work for Quality Matters. The Health Research Board, what their job is they develop the NDTRS form. They're responsible for it. They've created all the questions, and they have a lot of kind of experts in their office who can provide support and clarity about why those questions are written those way, or why the answers are very specific, or why it has to be answered in certain ways. If you come up with problems with the error messages or the warnings, and you're not clear why your service is getting them, the Health Research Board is the best source of getting information and advice with that. Including Quality Matters, I mean, we're two charities. We developed the eCASS system, and as part of the eCASS system, we installed and created the NDTRS form, and we worked very closely with the Health Research Board to make sure that it was correct. But we're really here, we're available. Like, our team is here to kind of address many of the problems that you're having. So, you know, previously people had said, you know, like, I don't think it's actually the form, and I don't think it's actually our fault. I think there's problems where I'm entering something and I keep on getting an error message. Great. That's the perfect thing that you should bring into our attention, and we're more than happy to support you with resolving that. So, you know, you really just need to raise that issue with our team so that we can get onto you and figure out how we can fix that problem. We have lots of ways that we can provide support. So we have a website that has step-by-step instructions. We've got videos like that actually are 3 minutes, 4 minutes long. So if you're not tired of listening to me speak for 1 hour, you can watch a few of these videos so you can hear me talk about the eCASS system and how to do an NDTRS form. We have a guidebook that has step-by-step instructions for staff. And lastly, you can attend kind of our training sessions, and we'll be running more of these in the future. And if you are wondering how to access those stuff, you just need to go to Include the website. And when you go to the website, sorry, I'm gonna just go to website right now. I'll show you where to find this stuff. So include.ie. So if you go to the website, what you'll see is a little section here called eCASS on Include's website, sorry. And then it says NDTRS link resources. And what you'll see is this is a page that's managed actually by my colleague here, Dermot. And what we do is we update it with all the information that comes through it. You'll actually probably find even this recording of this webinar on this website early next week, so that other people can watch them, or you can share this video with the rest of your staff team. The Health Research Board. I mean, really, I think Derek mentioned this earlier on in the chat window. You can really go to the Health Research Board to get information on two things. One, if you want some training on the Link system, you can contact them. Someone in the chat window also asked, oh, Philip, do you know what our login details are for Link, or do you know how we can get that information? Well, I don't really have anyone's username and password for Link. So if you're having trouble logging in, you can contact them. You can contact the Health Research Board, and they will give you some help around that. If you have any questions about about the form itself, so you know, if you have specific questions about something that's happening on the form, or you're unclear about why things are asked a certain way, or you're unsure about when you have to submit data or how frequently you need to submit data, then you really should be contacting the Health Research Board as well. And they have the exact same address for both those things. It's ndtrs@hrb.ie. And you'll probably get in touch with a member of their staff right away. Like, they'll follow up with you. There's a bunch of people there who are really working hard this time of year to make sure that your services get the information they need. I really recommend, I mean, checking out our website, because I think that, to be honest, there's lots of resources out there for people. What I'd like to do is let people know that if you're having a technical problem, what you need to do is kind of contact the membership team. So there's a members corner that's there. Your service probably would have just got an email a couple weeks ago with your password to access that part of the system. What you do is, once you get in there, you can raise an issue. And just this morning, yeah, like, we'll call you back, we'll email you right away. Like I said, literally on the floor above us, there's a group of staff right there who monitor that. Just this morning, I was with one of our colleagues, Darius, and he was answering a handful of emails back to people as well. So we're really conscious that you're on a deadline. We're working there to support you. The best way to do it is to contact us through this. So I'm going to go through a few of the questions that we were receiving in our chat window. What I'd love to do is I'm actually going to close down the webinar. I'm going to say, great, it's all done. We've got no more slides. I've got no more information to offer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang back here. I'm going to stay right here. We're going to let you guys ask your questions, and we're going to answer people. Like I've got nowhere to go. So I've got half an hour here to just answer as many questions as possible. If you want to contact us separately, if you want to kind of get in touch with us directly, raise an issue with us. There's a few people here that I'm going to follow up with by phone, or my colleague will today. So, but if you have anything specific, or if you have an issue and you're kind of going, I thought Philip was going to phone me and he didn't, you need to get a hold of us. Please do, because there was about 30 people in today's webinar. So there's a bunch of people, and I haven't written down everyone's specific issue. So please do follow up with me. I hope you did find today's webinar interesting and useful. I know it was great to have a chance to speak with about 30 different organizations and give them support around this. If you're kind of feeling nervous about the NDTRS forms that have to be sent by the end of the month, please don't be. There's a lot of people here and who are really interested in helping your organization. The best thing you can do is get a hold of us and say, hey, I'm having some issues and I need some help, and we're going to do whatever we can to make sure you get the support you need. Yeah, please do get in contact with us. Thank you. There's a lot of messages from people saying thanks to Philip and the team here to Include. I just want to say thank you to you guys for taking time on a Friday morning to participate in this webinar. I really do hope it was useful. And for those of you who do need some help, I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. Listen, all the best to you over the next couple of weeks. And at the end of the month, please send our team at Include an email. Let us know that you're ready for us to send off your NDTRS data. Okay, let's talk about some of the issues that people are having. So Rachel asked, when will this recording be available on YouTube? Probably actually by Monday or Tuesday, to be honest. It's not that much work. So we'll put that on. And maybe what I'll do is next week, I'll share the link around in our eCASS newsletter. And that newsletter is sent to kind of system administrators and managers of eCASS services across the country. So we'll let them know, oh, could you share this video with some of your staff? Thanks, Rachel. So a message from Sean at CDA. Thanks for the morning. Last question, is there a plan to have the NDTRS auto-populate the number of sessions entered on eCASS? Really good question. Sean, there is no plans at the moment to automatically kind of, so what Sean's asking is, if I'm a frontline worker and I'm recording the number of key working sessions, like I recorded my appointment on Monday and I'm recorded on Wednesday, is there a chance that what can happen is that the system will go behind the scenes, calculate or add up all the different appointments for that client, and then automatically shove it into the NDTRS form? There is no plans for that, Sean. And I can be really clear as to why. I've always dreamt that we could do this. I think it would be really, really useful. But the issue is that the interventions that are delivered by CDA Trust, for example, may not conform with the list of different interventions that are recorded by the Health Research Board. There's a lot of work involved, I suppose. And the reason for that is because every addiction service that I've worked with, when we've designed their eCASS system, we allowed them to identify or come up with their own list of interventions. So it's not a matter of just creating a tool that says, oh, count that up and shove it in there. It's actually a lot more complex for us to do because every addiction service is kind of unique in that respect. And also, if we automate it and someone made an error, so I once worked with an addiction service where someone had put a key working session in it, and they said, well, to make it easier on myself, I'm going to say it's going to be repeating. So I don't have to keep on entering every week. If we have a weekly session, I'll make it repeat. And then what happened is they accidentally put it in for like 3 years. So there was 150 key working sessions, and the client disengaged, after a couple of months. But it was really hard to get that information out. If you make it automatic, that means you could have incorrect information falling onto an NDTRS form. And we just want to avoid that as much as possible. So it's something we haven't explored yet. But if there is more interest in the future, we could look into it again. So Graciela has sent a message from Waterford, South Tipperary. I've been watching some of the YouTube videos, but it seems like my system doesn't have the updates. Okay, yeah, that's what I've noticed, Graciela, is that what you're saying. And the best thing that I can do is actually get our team here to log into your system and see. For instance, I know that you guys have the update. I'm kind of curious why you, as a person, that hasn't been activated before. And I think I know the reason why. It's the same issue that John at DLR Cat was talking about. We need to make sure the permission for your account is turned on. That should have been handled by your manager. And if it hasn't, that's something we can double check. So thanks for the message. And yeah, we'll be in touch. John, missed a lot of the webinar. Can you start again, please? Thanks, John. I appreciate the message. You know what? We'll send you the recording. Oh, that's great. Thanks. Great. That's Maureen. Wonderful. Philip, can I just check? Can you close HRBs after 4 weeks disengaged? Jen, I don't know what your question's asking. Can I just check that you can close an HRB 4 weeks disengaged? So you're saying that a client was referred into your project. And Jen, if you want, you can hit the space bar and you can actually talk with your microphone. And if you can't talk with your microphone, that's all right. I'll just read your text. So client engaged with your service. They were assessed. So my name is Joe Bloggs. I was self-referred to DYP. And I was working with you, my key worker, for like 8 weeks, 2 months. And then at some point, I stopped coming. So I disengaged. You're asking, when do we close this? Or maybe they stopped showing up. Yeah, sorry. So you could maybe you could close down an entity. This is a good question for the Health Research Board, to be absolutely honest. But to my knowledge, what happens is you can close on that. Like if you know the client is not coming back, they've disengaged, they've exited your service, then you can close on that form. As a key worker, you're the best placed person to know if that person's not attending. However, if you're kind of uncertain, I know lots of services where people disengage and they may or may not link back in. I think what the Health Research Board has generally recommended as a guidance is that after about a period of around 6 to 8 weeks, that's probably the right time to close down a form. So, we haven't had any contact from them after 6 weeks or 8 weeks. It's apparent they're not going to come back or they're not going to engage. So we'll exit their NDTRS form. Now later on, if they refer or they return back to our service, then we create a brand new NDTRS form for that client. But I don't think that's always necessary. So if the client's told you, or if you've contacted the client and you said, hi, Joe, are you going to be attending your appointment next Wednesday? You didn't attend your last one. And they said, you know what, I'm not interested in attending the service anymore. Or I don't think it's the right time for me. I'm going through stuff. That that they've disengaged. So you can kind of put the exit details on the form right away. I hope that answers your question, Jen. If you have got a little more, if you want some more information, you can give me a buzz and I'm happy to answer it for you. Lastly, thanks to Include. I think we all have a great understanding of what you're doing. Unless the workers do our job great. Oh, Sean, thanks so much for the wonderful message. That's really nice. And thank you for all your really helpful questions. I think, Sean, in particular, you had a lot of really useful points, things that were shared by everybody else. So really thanks for taking the time to take the opportunity to write down all those questions into the chat window. So yeah, all the best to Tim and the team. I hope everyone's doing well there. Thanks so much for participating. And Jen, I'm glad that does help you figure it out. That's great. So those are all the questions we've got. Does anybody have any more questions for me and Dermot while we're here? My coffee's gone cold, but I'm still going to drink it. Great. No? Great. Well, it's 11:24 here, so we've been doing this for an hour and a half, so I'm glad everyone's got what they needed. And listen, thanks so much for everybody who participated in today's webinar. On behalf of Quality Matters and Include here, I got to say, this is my job and I love doing it. I love working with your projects. Maybe, if you're having some more problems, you've got a weekend facing you. So take a few days off, come back to us next week, and we'll all kind of kick into this and we'll get you guys sorted. Patrick, great to talk to you again. Good seeing you. Great. That's exactly what I was saying. Great, Patrick. I'll talk to you next week. Lovely. Everybody, have a good weekend. Thank you so much for participating in the webinar. And listen, give us a buzz if you do need anything. All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks so much. Bye.